Welcome back to another episode of the Success Series. Today's topic's a bit more personal, but I'm excited to share it, and I think there'll be a lot of takeaways, and hopefully all of us can relate to it in one way or another. And so today's topic will be surrounding miracles, both large and small, and how we can draw them and attract them into our lives. A couple of years ago, I had just recently moved to LA at the time. It was around 2021, 2022. I was in my early 20s, and I just started working for a gentleman here in LA. It was a great opportunity at a startup. And although I was excited, there was a lot of anxiety that was associated with it. I hadn't been in a role of that caliber before. I was often questioning, am I doing enough? Am I doing the right things? Will this opportunity be there? Will it go away? What will I do if it doesn't work out? And so all these irrational fears started to creep in. And then it was paired with the fact that I was living away from my family for the first time and being in LA, and everything was just new. And although it was exciting, there was a lot of anxiety and stress that was associated with it. And I remember I went back to New York City. I was living in LA, as I mentioned, and there was a big Shabbat at the Kabbalah Center in New York. People had flown in from all over the world to be there. And I was sitting with my dad at the table, and it was a combination of things. I hadn't gotten much sleep the night before. I was exhausted. I was hungry, and I didn't feel great already. And I remember sitting there, and there was a moment where all of a sudden I was filled with anxiety while we were sitting at the table. And on top of that, there was the fact that there was all these people around me, and there was people coming over, and I was worried that, are they going to see that I'm nervous? So I'm like, they're going to see me, things are not going well for him because look how stressed he is, look how nervous he is. Why is he so in his head? And so that just added to the anxiety. And of course, one by one, people were coming over and of course saying hi to me from love, but that made the situation more and more overwhelming. And then I remember I got to a point where I was like, I need to get out of here. And I even contemplated, getting up from the table and going home by myself, which in hindsight would have been crazy to do. But the anxiety and the fear was so intense that it's the only thing that, made sense or could give me some sort of peace. And so I said to myself, before I do that, before I get up from this table, leave abruptly with all the light that's available here, being with my parents on Shabbat and going home to be by myself, which in its own right is also not a positive thing, I said, I'm going to share with my dad how I'm feeling. And once I do that, then I will leave, but I'm going to at least fill him in on how I'm feeling before being reactive and leaving. And I told him, and I said, Abba, I was honestly a little bit ashamed, and I'm, thinking back on the feeling, I was embarrassed to tell him that I was feeling this way. But I said, Abba, I feel super anxious. I feel very uncomfortable. I don't know what's causing it. I'm nervous. My heart's racing. My hands are sweaty. I feel uncomfortable. I want to go home. My dad said to me, not even entertaining the thought or the ability for me to go home, that was never an option in his eyes. He said, sit there, close your eyes for a moment, and imagine the light of the Creator surrounding you and giving you a hug. Imagine the Creator puts his arms around you and envelops you with a blanket of white light. And of course, like any person, that's not something that you try. You resist it initially. You're like, no, I understand that usually works. I'm really not feeling good, right? And you fight it, you fight it, you fight it. My dad said, just try it. Try it for a second, try it for a moment. So although I didn't think it would work, and although I wanted to get out of there, I saw this as a bridge to really being able to leave. Eventually, I said, I'll try this for a moment. It's not going to work. And then I'm going to tell my dad that I have to leave. I tried it. I truly tried it. I closed my eyes for a second. I saw the Creator putting his arms around me and enveloping me with light. Within seconds, not only had the light and not only had the anxiety gone away, I felt better than I think I've ever felt before. And I remember it felt so good that I wanted to stay in that moment, right? So, which is crazy because I had experienced what I felt was like the worst experience that I could have ever imagined. And then 3 seconds later, I felt the most joy and the most fulfillment that I ever have experienced. Even to this day, I oftentimes try to go back to the feeling that I experienced in that moment. It felt like everything that I desire was there and accessible to me. It felt like I had clarity on every single area of my life. It felt like everything was perfect and I was exactly where I wanted to be. So much so that although, and it's ironic, the anxiety is, for those of you that have experienced it, which I'm sure we all have to one extent or another, actually pulls you out of your body, right? You feel detached from the people around you. You feel disconnected. I had experienced the similar feeling, right? Being with the Creator, but it was a very positive experience. And that, again, we'll talk about illusion later, but the illusion of this physical world is that the realities on a 1% level were the same. Both out-of-body experiences, both feeling disconnected from everybody around me. One was defined as anxiety, the other was defined as connection to the light of the Creator. The reason why I'm sharing this is all I did was let go. I let go for 1 second, although it was a game, although I said I'm still going to leave anyways, although I still didn't believe, I didn't have certainty in the Creator. For 1 second, I let go of how I felt. And just that 1 second of letting go allowed all of these miracles and blessings to come into my life. To fast forward the evening, After that had happened, it was, relatively short-lived, maybe 30 seconds of an overwhelmment of excitement and joy and happiness. My dad looked at me and he smiled for a second, obviously understanding that I experienced what he knew I would. And then we started singing. He started singing at the table. We started singing. Everybody came around, and it felt like, for those of you that are familiar with the concept of Mashiach, it felt like Mashiach for the next few hours. It could have been a typical Shabbat. I could have not had anxiety. I could have come in there like I usually do, filled with joy and happiness and peace, and it might have been beautiful, but the level of joy, the level of connection that I had would have never been possible. And so when you ask for miracles in your life, when we think about the word miracles, sometimes it can be amazing things. Sometimes it can be selling your business for $100 million. Sometimes it can be finding your soulmate. Sometimes it can be manifesting everything that you ever desired you'd have. But other times it can be these small moments where you experience darkness and now you've seen the light. Thank you so much for tuning in to the Success Series. If you enjoyed, please like, comment, subscribe, and share with your friends. Also, if there are some topics you'd want us to explore, please share it with us at the Success Series on both YouTube and Instagram.